The girl saw the berries first. They hung low, under a broad leaf, glossy and red in a way that looked almost deliberate, like the forest had put them there on purpose, just for her. The air around her smelled of warm soil and crushed leaves, the kind of afternoon where nothing seemed dangerous at all. Her fingers were already reaching. Her mouth was already anticipating the sweetness. Then a hand closed around her wrist. Not gently. Nar didn't look angry. She looked like someone who had done this before, many times, to many children, and would probably do it many times again. She crouched down next to the girl, still holding her wrist, and said nothing for a moment. Just looked at the berries, then at the girl. "Not yet," she said. The girl didn't understand. The berries looked exactly like the ones they'd eaten 2 days ago near the river. Same color, same shine, same shape. But Nar had lived long enough to know that looks the same and is the same are two very different promises. And in this world, believing the wrong one didn't get you a stomachache. It got you a slow, bad night, and sometimes it got you nothing at all, ever again. This is the part that's easy to forget. Watching from thousands of years later, eating whatever we want without a second thought. For most of human history, figuring out what was safe to eat wasn't obvious. It wasn't written anywhere. It wasn't tested in a lab. It was learned the hard way by someone and then carried forward. Hand to hand, mouth to mouth, generation to generation, as one of the oldest pieces of knowledge our species ever built. Nar broke one berry open between her fingers. A thin trickle of dark juice ran down her thumb. She touched it, just the tip of her tongue, to the smallest possible amount. Waited. The girl watched her face carefully. The way you watch someone tasting food, you're not sure about yourself. Nar's mouth twisted. She spat into the dirt and shook her head once, sharp. "Bitter," she said. "Wrong bitter." There's a difference, and every forager in this band had learned to feel it in their body before they had words for it. A little bitterness is normal. Plenty of good food carries some. But there's another kind of bitter, sharper, that seems to arrive at the back of the tongue like a warning bell. That specific unpleasantness isn't random. It's one of the oldest alarm systems any of us are born with. A set of taste receptors built over millions of years to flag exactly the kinds of chemicals that plants use to defend themselves. Poison, more often than not, announces itself first as taste. But taste alone was never quite enough. Some of the worst things don't taste like much of anything at all. That night, around the fire, the girl watched Nar's hands work a pale root over and over, slicing it thin, dropping the pieces into a hollowed stone bowl of water, weighing down the top layer with a flat rock so nothing floated free. Smoke drifted low across the camp, and somewhere behind them, someone was already asleep. Nar left the bowl where it sat. She didn't touch it again until the next evening. "Why does it sit?" the girl asked. Nar didn't answer right away. Instead, she reached back, the way old people do, into a memory that wasn't really about the root at all. She had been about the girl's age when her own mother had done exactly this. Not with words either, just hands, water, patience, and a rule that had clearly cost someone, somewhere, dearly to learn. Some roots carry something bad in them, something that softens and washes away if you're willing to wait, and turns dangerous fast if you're not. Boil it, soak it, sometimes both, twice over. Skip the waiting, and the same root that fed you for a week could be the last thing you ever ate. Thousands of years later, we'd have a name for what's actually happening. Certain roots, cassava among them, carry natural compounds that release cyanide when eaten raw or undercooked, and the exact soaking and cooking process foraging and farming communities developed all over the world independently is still the method used to make them safe today. Nar didn't know the chemistry. She didn't need to. She only needed to know that her mother had done it this way, and her mother's mother before that, and no one in this particular line had died finding out what happens if you skip a step. Not every lesson in the band had been learned so gently. There was a hunter. Young, strong, hungry in the specific, impatient way a person gets after a run of bad luck, who didn't like waiting for anything, least of all berries. He'd watch the birds all afternoon, picking at the same red cluster the girl had reached for, swallowing them without hesitation, without consequence, without a single dead bird dropping out of the branches. "The birds eat them," he said to Nar, more challenge than question. "If it kills anything, it should kill them first." It was a reasonable thing to think. It was also wrong in a way that had probably cost someone their life long before this exact conversation. Birds process certain toxins differently than people do. Plants that are perfectly harmless to a bird can still do real damage to a human body. Watching the animals was a useful habit, one every forager leaned on constantly, but it was never a guarantee. It was a hint, not a rule. The band's real advantage wasn't instinct copied from birds. It was something slower and much harder to build, a shared, tested, remembered map of what was actually safe, assembled one mistake at a time, by people over more time than any single life could hold. The hunter didn't wait to hear the rest of that thought. That night, alone, away from the fire, he ate a small handful of the berries anyway, just to prove a point to no one in particular. By midnight, he was doubled over at the edge of camp, sweating in the cold air, unable to keep anything down. One of the younger children woke up crying at the sound of it, and someone else quietly banked the fire higher, the way people do when they need the light more than the warmth. Not fatal. The amount had been small, and someone caught him early, but frightening enough that the whole band was awake before the moon had moved very far. Nar sat with him through most of it, holding water to his mouth in small amounts, saying very little, her face unreadable in the firelight. It would be easy to tell this part of the story as if Nar had simply always known better. She hadn't. Somewhere in her own past, someone in her family had learned the hard way too. That's what it means to be the person everyone else trusts to know what's safe. You're not naturally cautious. You're what's left after enough people weren't. By morning, the hunter was pale, embarrassed, and very much alive. The girl sat near him, quiet, turning the whole night over in her head. Eventually, she asked Nar the question she'd been circling since the berries. "How do you know? Really know?" Nar thought about it for a while before she answered, and when she did, it wasn't really an answer at all. Just the truth, plainly. "Someone before me found out," she said, "so I wouldn't have to." That's still, in a strange and quiet way, true for you. Somewhere in your own kitchen, right now, there are foods you've never once worried about. Almonds, kidney beans, olives, cassava flour in your bread, that all carry the exact same history as that pale root by Nar's fire. Someone, somewhere, a very long time ago, found out the hard way what happens if you eat them raw, or too soon, or too much, or skip the soaking. That knowledge didn't come from a label. It came from a person, and then another person, and then thousands more, carrying it forward for you, long before you were born, so that you would never have to reach for something bright and glossy and wonder, even for a second, if it might be the last thing you ever ate. You've never had to test your food with the tip of your tongue and wait to see what happens. That's not luck. That's inheritance. One of the oldest, quietest gifts our species ever gave itself.